Hey, I'm Clint Garrett, Ace Networker, and welcome to this short mini-course video, the 5 topics to ace the Network Plus exam. As you may already know, I'm about helping you pass the Network Plus exam and get your own career or even business started in the computer networking field. Contrary to what some are saying, computer networking and those with expertise in it is growing phenomenally fast. And if it's a field or a topic you're personally interested in, I want to help you learn all about it and simplify it and make it as easy for you to understand as possible. I struggled, like most do, when I was first learning about computer networking and trying to get my foot in the door in the field and get started on my own career. So I know how difficult some of the concepts can be to wrap your mind around. In this short mini course video, I'm going to show you what topics and areas you'll need to know and the basic percentages on any given Network Plus exam test that each of those topics makes up on the test. This is kind of your biggest heads up. This is to allow you to more easily pass the exam, to know what to study, to get your certification, and to be well on your way with your own career or business shortly. The Network Plus exam is 90 minutes long, currently, at the time this video is made. You can and may have a maximum of 90 questions on the exam. To pass the Network Plus exam, you will need a passing score of 720 or higher. Now, this is on a scale of 100 to 900, so you can score anywhere from the lowest of 100 to the highest of 900. You need to make at least a 720 or higher to pass the Network Plus and to get your certification. It's somewhat well known that every question is worth a different number of points. You'll have multiple choice questions and performance-based questions. So it's hard to determine exactly how many questions you'll need to get right to get a passing score, but suffice it to say, you want to get as many correct as possible, just like any other test or exam. Now, multiple choice will be like A, B, C, or D type questions. And when I say performance-based, you may have to place things into a particular order or fill in the blanks, or in some cases, you may be presented with a scenario and have to complete that scenario online. You also may be presented with a command prompt, and you'll be asked to perform a specific function, which is why it's good to know the Cisco IOS and the commands and functions and uses of each of those commands. And again, we'll get to that in other materials. Essentially, there are 5 categories you'll encounter on the Network Plus exam. The first of which is what we're going to call networking concepts. And the networking concepts, one of the 5 sections on the Network Plus exam, is an average of about 23% of the topics or the questions that you're going to get on any test. Now, networking concepts covers things like ports and protocols, their purposes and their uses. It covers things like devices, applications, services, and protocols at appropriate OSI layers. So you want to know the OSI model. Concepts and characteristics of switching and routing. Scenario-specific configuration of appropriate IP addressing components. You'll need to know comparing and contrasting characteristics of network topologies, technologies, and types. You'll need to know scenario-specific implementation and configuration of appropriate wireless technologies. You'll need to understand some cloud concepts, and you'll need to know the functions of network services. So that's one of the 5 areas you're going to see on the questions on the Network Plus exam. Again, those are all under networking concepts. The other topic area out of the 5 that you're going to encounter is what we're going to call infrastructure. This averages about 18% of any Network Plus exam. This is things like deploying the appropriate cabling solution, what type of cables are used, when they might be needed, how long those cables can go before you experience things like attenuation and loss of signal, and what types of cables you need. Is it twisted pair? Is it fiber optic? That type of thing. You'll also need to know how to determine networking device placement and how to install those or configure them, basics of those. You'll need to know advanced networking device purposes and use cases. In other words, you'll need to know more advanced things like when would you use a switch, when would you use a layer 3 device or a router, which is a layer 3 device, when would you use a firewall. If you are still using hubs, which we don't, when would you use those, that type of thing. You'll also need to know the purposes of network storage technologies and virtualization. Now, this is getting into things like data center and things like that, but you're going to need to understand some of the basics of those, the purposes of those storage technologies. technologies, like what is a storage array used for? What is a storage server or a normal server used for? Why do we have virtualization of server components, that type of thing. You'll also then need to know how to compare and contrast different WAN or wide area network technologies. Now, I've got some videos on my YouTube channel for that, so you might want to check those out. But those are the kind of different areas of infrastructure that you'll need to understand. Again, that's 18% estimated of the Network Plus exam. The third topical area that you'll need to know and study for the Network Plus exam is network operations. This, on average, makes up about 17% of the Network Plus exam. Network operations is things like use of appropriate diagrams and documentation to manage your network. How to compare and contrast disaster recovery and business continuity concepts. What do you do if your network goes down? What do you do if you lose power, if you have a tropical storm or hurricane, things like that, earthquake. Common scanning, patching, and monitoring processes and expected outputs. Things like packet captures, things like that. Use of scenario-specific remote access methods. In other words, what methods can you use to remotely access different devices or management of a network or devices on a network. And then the last of that is kind of the policies and best practices that are used in network operations. The fourth topic or area is network security, and again, network security is a big growing portion of IT overall. It's also the biggest growing portion of networking in general. Network security is going to cover about 20% of any average Network Plus exam that you take. This is things like physical security of devices and their purposes. How do you physically secure those to keep people from accessing those devices or areas of your network that aren't allowed to? Things like authentication and access controls. Securing basic wireless networks, scenario-based type things like that. Common networking attacks. Implementing network device hardening. And that's also scenario-based, as well as common mitigation techniques. If somebody has hacked your network, if somebody has accessed network resources, things like that, what are the mitigation techniques that are used? And again, these don't go into extreme detail on the Network Plus exam, but you're going to need to know some of the basic premises behind all of these and the tools and the protocols and things that are used. The fifth topic on the Network Plus exam is network troubleshooting and tools, and this will account for about 22% of any exam that you might take for Network Plus. This is things like network troubleshooting methodologies, appropriate tools for different scenarios, troubleshooting common wired connectivity or performance issues, troubleshooting common wireless connectivity or performance issues, and troubleshooting common network service issues. So that's the basic rundown of what you'll encounter on the Network Plus exam. If you enroll in the more detailed courses I offer on each one of these categories, we get more in-depth and detailed with everything in each of those categories. So be looking for those to be available shortly. And if you're really searching for how to pass your Network Plus exam more easily, I recommend, as I always recommend, that you understand the concepts first, which is how I try to teach everything, kind of from the 30,000 foot view. Then you want to delve down into and learn the details of each piece until you thoroughly understand it. Now, I want to stop right here and remind you to just breathe. Just take a breath, especially if you're just starting out in networking and you're learning and you're just grasping these new concepts. My whole purpose with creating the content online that I do and teaching the more in-depth courses I offer you is to help you learn and know all of these concepts in the easiest way possible for you to understand. After going through all of those topics and protocols and things you need to know to pass the Network Plus exam, don't let it scare you. The exam itself is really not that complicated. Not even as complicated as it looks when we look at that outline like we just did. I assure you. So stick with me. I'll walk you through getting your test taken and passed and thereby getting you certified with Network Plus. So take my word for it when I tell you that you really need to have these concepts simplified and explained to you in everyday terminology first. This allows you to then get into the more technical details of each topic or protocol. But grasp the concepts first and you're well on your way to a fantastic career or business in the computer networking field. Almost guaranteed. When I or anyone lists out the topics covered on the Network Plus exam like I just did, it can really seem and sound daunting, cumbersome, and overwhelming. And I get it. Don't let that happen to you. Your next step is to pick one of those topics and delve into it further. And I invite you to get into my entry-level course on each of those 5 topic areas to really gain for yourself that much-needed better understanding. So I look forward to seeing you sign up for those and get into them and get involved in the discussions with other students and ask me questions on the inside. It's the only way for you to absolutely master these concepts. And here's the real key to all of this. When you learn and master these concepts shortly, you'll be able to easily move up to the next level certifications like CCNA, CCNP, CCIE, Security Plus, and on, because once you know the concepts around this technology, and you really do learn those by studying Network Plus, your knowledge and your understanding will catapult you past those next certifications with ease. Okay? So you'll be amazed at what you know and what you remember. So here's your next step. I want you to look below this video. Immediately below this video, you'll find the links to the 2 practice question websites that I promised you, where you can take similar questions to what you'll find on the Network Plus exam. Some maybe exactly, I'm not sure, but there's no guarantee of that. But they're very similar to what you will possibly encounter when you take the Network Plus exam. Both websites are really, really good, and they'll really test your knowledge to make sure you know the material. Again, practice makes perfect, so I highly recommend going through those. If something confuses you, learn more about it. Look things up. Now that I've covered the topics on the Network Plus exam, be checking your inbox, as I'm going to be sending out more bonuses for you just to say thank you for accessing this video workshop on the Network Plus exam outline, what's covered on the exam, to get your certification. And I'll see you inside the future bonuses and in the next videos.